Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by FullPressCoverage.com. The playoffs are underway. We are in full swing playoff mode. I know Sap and I watched a ton of basketball over the weekend. Some would say too much basketball, but I'd argue you can't watch too much basketball. Sap, both of our teams, not particularly great performances in game one, but that's why you have, a best of seven. You can recover from it. It's not the NFL playoffs. One game doesn't do you in. But let's talk about what we saw from the first week. Anything that from the first game, rather. What stands out for you the most of this weekend?
For the entire 8 games that we watched, kind of a macro approach to what we watched, I would say, first of all, 3 major stars really had trouble shooting free throws, right? Giannis was 6 for 13 in Milwaukee's win over Miami. Ben Simmons was 0 for 6 from the free throw line in Philadelphia's win over Washington, and LeBron James was 1 for 4 in the Lakers' loss against Phoenix. So you take those 3 great players, 7 for 23 from the free throw line, that's only 30%. Ugh. So that was just some ugly stuff that we watched. I thought Devin Booker may have been the best all-around performer of the weekend. He went 34, 7, and 8. And the more I watch him, and I do love making comparisons, actually. He's kind of a poor man's – I know, I love making comparisons. Everything's a comp to me at some point, even if I have to compare basketball players to actors, actresses, politicians,
those are your favorites.
Attorneys. Those are yes, absolutely. I mean, to compare it to another basketball player is kind of dull. I thought Devin Booker looked a little bit like Kobe Bryant in that win over the Lakers on Sunday. Not that he's going to be Kobe Bryant at any point in his career, but the footwork, the ability to score from all different places on the floor, just the artistic acumen that he has, his ability to shoot from 3. And then he's also rebounding and passing the ball, quite well, and also showing a lot of leadership, which I think maybe we could talk about the lack of that with, say, someone like Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown, who were, in that same age group as Devin Booker, and you could have a comparison of which one you take out of those 3. But watching this weekend, Devin Booker was damn impressive. And again, a lot of pressure on Phoenix. First time they've been in the postseason in 11 years. They're playing the Lakers. They're an underdog despite being a 2 seed, and they were able to win. And this is with Chris Paul getting hurt in the second quarter and coming back and not looking anywhere near what Chris Paul normally does. So I would say Devin Booker, in the end, was probably the most impressive performer this weekend.
Sap, quickly pushback. In fairness to Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, they've made the playoffs every season they've been in the NBA. Yes. This is Devin Booker's first playoff game. So, yep. Let's not just, overwrite history or rewrite history and saying that, they don't show this type of leadership. He's played in one playoff game. They've been to the conference finals a couple of times each. So, listen, this season was a disaster for the Celtics. It continued in their first playoff game, but I'm not ready to say Devin Booker is this great leader yet, and because he's played in one really good playoff game.
No, but I think he exhibited some of that. And I'm just what the broadcasters were talking about in that game yesterday, that going into the All-Star break, he decided not to partake in the All-Star break and play in the game or go into the skills competition or whatever the case may be, because he wanted to just get healthy. Meanwhile, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, who were both dealing with some sort of issues, Jason Tatum with COVID issues, Jaylen Brown with his knee, decided they were going to the All-Star game. So Devin Booker, I believe, is a little older than those guys by a year or 2. So maybe he's just further along in his development, but I just was really impressed with him yesterday. When you're on the same court with LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Chris Paul, and you end up being the best player by a mile. I mean, it wasn't even close who the best player on the court was in that first game between Phoenix and the Lakers. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I didn't understand why he fell all the way to 13 when he was drafted. It didn't really make much sense. The Kentucky pedigree, he had a really nice shot out of college, and instead he fell really far in that draft, and obviously the Suns lucked out because he's turning into a star player, and he was fantastic.
Are you sure he went 13th? I thought he went 7th.
No, 13th.
Okay, he went 13th. I'm surprised he fell that far down, because he's had this constant growth every single year. He becomes an all-star. Now he's probably going to be maybe third team all-NBA. And I don't want to spend the entire podcast on Devin Booker. I think he's a wonderful player. And I didn't mean to disparage Tatum and Brown in that sense, because Brown's not even playing in this postseason. And Tatum, was great against Washington, god awful against Brooklyn in game one of that particular series that got underway Saturday night. But the point being that, when you're on the court with megastars and you end up being by far the best player in game one, that's pretty impressive. But there was a lot to talk about this weekend. I just thought it was kind of funny and sad at the same time that three great players couldn't hit free throws to save their lives. And, meanwhile, the Brooklyn Nets, their big three of Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and James Harden went 25 of 27 from the line. And it's really not a surprise because those guys are all high 80, low 90% free throw shooters. So, they're free throws for a reason. And I don't know if it's going to cost the Bucks a playoff game or the Lakers a playoff game. But, down the road, that could be an Achilles heel for those great players, Giannis, Anthony Davis. I mean, and Anthony Davis wasn't good from the free throw line either. Obviously, LeBron James and Ben Simmons is just a disaster there. 0 for 6 from the free throw line. Otherwise, he had a great game. Well, I'm watching him in that game against Washington. I'm like, this guy is the modern day Scottie Pippen. If he could just shoot a little. Because
I don't think he had a great game. I don't look at that as he had a great game. I think he has to score more. Listen, I mean, Tobias Harris, you got 37 out of him. You're not going to get that every single game.
No, but Ben Simmons had 15 rebounds and 15 assists, and he played great defense. So,
he's 6 points?
6 points, yeah. He was 0 for 6 from the line. I mean, yeah, he's got to do better than that. He's 6'10". He handles the ball. There's no reason he can't get to the rim pretty regularly, other than the fact that maybe he doesn't want to go there, because what happens when you go to the basket, you get fouled and you got to go to the free throw line. He doesn't even seem to have a plan when he's at the free throw line. That's the alarming thing. Like, Giannis has some sort of routine. One of the shots took 13 seconds leading up to it, and it was a violation. I get that. LeBron has some sort of routine that he goes through and starts breathing and overanalyzing the situation. Simmons, gets the ball and plays hot potato with it and just chucks it up. And we've talked about before, is he really left-handed, right-handed? It looks like he doesn't even know how to shoot. If he ever was able to get even any kind of consistent outside shot, and I'm not saying go become Steph Curry from beyond three, but just some decent outside shooting.
6 points, Sap. I mean, come on.
He's Scottie Pippen otherwise. Great defender, great rebounder, great passer. No, that's terrible. 6 points, but they did win, and you got help from Tobias Harris. And again, they have enough depth on that team that they will beat Washington if Ben Simmons even averages 10 points a game.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. They won, but they beat the 8th seed, okay? They're expected to win. If Ben Simmons if they play the Nets, as what I expect is going to happen in the Eastern Conference Finals, if Ben Simmons scores 6, they're going to lose.
Well, Jason Tatum was 6 for 20 from the floor on Saturday night. So
he was bad.
And he's their primary scorer. But the thing is, Simmons does a lot of other things. Like, Simmons is the classic 90-10 guy that Bill Simmons, no relation to Ben, but Bill Simmons always talks about the 90-10 guy, where we don't spend enough on the 90% that he's great at. We harp on the 10% that he's bad at. He's definitely 10% of his game is the fact that the guy can't shoot. And that's a problem. Even if he could knock down his free throws would be beneficial, because then that would allow him to go to the basket at will. I mean, he's got to be one of the 5 best guys in the league going to the basket if he's not concerned about going to the free throw line, right? I mean, there's LeBron, Giannis, and Ben Simmons are probably the 3 guys going to the basket that are scary, and Zion just by brute force. Those are the guys that when they're trucking to the basket, it's like, okay, let's look out. And you know what? Those 4 guys don't shoot well from the free throw line, including Zion. That's an issue, because, you look at Durant, Kyrie Irving, and James Harden, man, when they go to the free throw line, you just, okay, that's going to be 2 points. Let's move on. Yeah.
So I have just compiled a quick list of guys that I thought were the most impressive and guys who I thought were the least impressive in game one. And just to recap the winners, so the teams that are up 1-0, in case you're not aware, you probably are, but we'll just get it out of the way too. The Grizzlies, Nets, Suns, Bucks, Blazers, Hawks, Sixers, and Mavericks all won their games. The most impressive players to me, Devin Booker, we already mentioned. Tobias Harris, we already mentioned. Trae Young, I thought was electric.
Yes.
Dame Lillard, fantastic. Kevin Durant, basically salvaged what was not a great offensive performance for the Nets, but he was unstoppable. Doncic was terrific. DeAndre Ayton, I thought, was extremely impressive. And Ja Morant and Dillon Brooks, the 2 young guys on the Grizzlies, I thought were really great.
Yeah, it's a great list. And your guy, Dillon Brooks from Oregon. So obviously,
Dillon
root
Brooks
for him. And
I'm not surprised.
Perfect
not
player.
Surprised to see it. Yeah, he was so clutch in college. Sap. He was so big time in big games. And he reminds me a lot of Paul Pierce in college. He's not as good as Paul Pierce, but he's got that FU part to his game.
Oh, yeah. And he's big. He's 6'7", 230. He's not a small guy, and he'll D up on anybody. He took the challenge of D'ing up on Steph Curry. Always good luck with that, but that kid can play. They've got a great mindset, Memphis, right? They're a kind of a tough, physical team. They score a lot of points in the paint, and Ja Morant is, again, if he develops some sort of outside shot, man, look out, because he's got not quite the athleticism of Russell Westbrook, but he's got a better feel for the game than Russell Westbrook. Damn, I think you and I sometimes have a better feel for the game than Russell Westbrook. I mean, he was just laying up bricks yesterday in that game against Philadelphia.
I saw your tweet. I'm shocked you know what Minecraft is.
Well, I don't. But I've got the Google machine out, Jet, and I said,
so what did you Google? What's made of bricks?
Like, something to do with bricks. Like, I didn't want to say the Indy 500, the Brickyard, because I don't even know if that makes any sense. So Minecraft. I said, this is cool. Jet will appreciate it. They'll think I'm really hip.
It was a great reference. I was just like, whoa.
Yeah, where'd that come from?
This is a guy who hasn't seen a movie in 5 years. He's referencing Minecraft video games.
2 years, Jet. When I get these cataracts out, I'll be back to the theater. But yeah, I mean, his misses are really bad too, right? It's not like they're not terrible. Like they break the backboard. They like miss the rim. I mean, they're really bad. But he's still out there busting his ass. I get all that. But Philadelphia and Milwaukee, they both have a lot of pressure on them, and they were able to survive those first games.
Yeah, Milwaukee's playing a much better team.
Much better team. And look, and Miami must be kicking themselves for not winning game one because Butler and Bam were god-awful from the floor. I mean, they were just bad.
Hero was terrible, too.
All of them were, and they still got that game into overtime.
Duncan Robinson was their best player, somehow.
Yeah, he hit 6 threes. I mean, he's lethal from outside. Butler and Bam were 8 for 37 from the floor. I mean, that's worse than the Celtics' key guys from the floor, because the Celtics, Tatum, Walker, and your third best scorer in this series should be Evan Fournier. They were 14 of 46 from the floor. That's 30%. You're not beating the Nets, going 14 for 46 from the floor with Tatum, Walker, and Fournier.
And that game was winnable for the Celtics. They played a tremendous first half. The Nets seemed so rusty. I guess makes sense considering the guys have played 8 games together. They had no rhythm at all. But the Celtics, their old Achilles heel of coming out in the second half in the third quarter. I had a friend of mine joked and said, I think this is what happens at halftime of Celtics games. Brad Stevens says, all right, guys, great half. Don't change anything. Do not make adjustments. Whatever you do, just play the exact same way. Kevin Durant, James Harden, Kyrie, they'll continue to miss. Don't worry about it. Don't change. Do this. And then they come out and they lose in the third quarter.
Well, they were up 5 at the half, and if you really look at it, the way they played defense or the way Brooklyn was god-awful from the floor, if the Celtics had been efficient offensively, they may have had a double-digit lead at the half. So now you've got Brooklyn maybe a little bit on the
down 15 anyway.
It is.
Might as well not be up.
I sneezed, and next thing you know, Brooklyn was up 7 because Durant just went off. Durant was horrible in the first half, and in the second half, the man is unstoppable. You just at his mercy. You hope he misses. He really is unguardable. And the scary part is the Nets played pretty decent defense. Again, they don't have to play defense at the level that the Lakers play or that the Knicks play, but if they play decent defense, we know how difficult they are going to be beat. As I try to speak, proper English here on the podcast, but. The Celtics had some opportunities there. They were only down 3 with 7 minutes left, and didn't go well from there.
Then the doors just got blown off. I think the Celtics are such massive underdogs in this series, and no one's really expecting much out of them. And even with that being said, I think that there's some key strategical errors that they made in that game, and that they should really look to address the rest of the series. I was saying on my post game show, Sap, they have really nothing to lose. So go with some weird I think the strategy of muck it up, really dirty the game up, try to establish an ugly 90s brand of basketball. I think play Tristan Thompson and Robert Williams at the same time. The Nets can't defend the paint. They don't have anybody who's even going to attempt to defend the paint. So just, make it weird, make it difficult, make it ugly for the Nets, play physical with them. You saw the impact Robert Williams had in the game. He was the best player for the Celtics by a country mile. I think that's what the Celtics have to do. Come with unique lineups, play a different brand of basketball than the Nets are expecting, because that's really the only way that they have any sort of chance of taking a game.
Yeah, it's probably Patriots, Rams, Super Bowl 36, right? Like just beat up the wide receivers and hope that they tire out and you get a lead and hold on at that point. I mean, you're going to have Marcus Smart body slam James Harden. I mean, is that an
Go
option?
for it.
I mean, well, that's the only way they can beat if Marcus Smart hurts someone. But the only problem with Marcus Smart is more oftentimes than not, he hurts himself before he hurts someone else. But yeah, you're not going to go out there and play conventional basketball and beat the Brooklyn Nets if you're the Boston Celtics. There's probably, I picked against them, but there's probably no team in the league that can just go out and say, well, let's just go mano a mano against the Brooklyn Nets. We'll match their talent because those three guys are just scary. Right? They didn't even have a good game yet. When you really look at Durant, Kyrie, and James Harden, it wasn't anything special. They shot 44% from the floor. They'll probably shoot better in game 2. They had 82 points, but it's not like they went off. I mean, it's damn scary facing those three guys.
Yeah, no, they played bad, and the Celtics didn't play horrible, and then that's still won by a considerable margin. So, I mean, that tells you all you need to know about both teams right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying from the Celtics perspective, again, when you're such a massive underdog, just try to put the Nets out of their comfort zone. That's all you can really do. Play physical with them. The Nets certainly don't want to play a physical brand of basketball. And it seems so counterintuitive in 2021 to play two bigs, but in this series, the Nets aren't playing anybody who's really a center. Play two bigs. The hell with it. If you lose, you lose. You're expected to get swept anyways.
How are you going to defend the pick and roll, though? I mean, you have
cares?
enough trouble with just
one. They can't defend it anyways. They don't defend it anyways.
No, not many teams do. The Lakers generally do a good job of it, except when Andre Drummond's on the floor where he's completely lost. But against the Nets, you do have to do things outside of the box, outside of your comfort zone, because you'll just roll out the balls out there. You could play your ass off, hit some shots, play good defense, and then look at the scoreboard at the end of the night and you lose by 11. And that's going to happen 3 more times and the season's over.
That's why I like the Jabari Parker move from Brad Stevens. I'll give him credit for that because, they were putting him on Durant. My dad was going, why the hell are they guarding Durant? I said, because it doesn't matter who guards Durant.
It doesn't matter.
If he can contribute on offense, which he did, Jabari Parker, I think, had 9 points, which is more than they typically get from anybody on their bench.
Yep.
The hell with it. One-on-one, no one's defending Durant. It doesn't make a difference. So if somebody can help on the offensive end, I thought that was a shrewd move by Brad Stevens. He said, you know what? Durant's going to score. Doesn't matter who on earth we put on him. Might as well put in somebody who we think can help us offensively. So I thought that was a smart move. And listen, they're not going to win the series. No one's expecting them to win the series. No. You just don't want to get swept. So do something creative to try to take a game. Surprise Brooklyn. They'll probably adjust to it the next game, but take a game.
Yeah, so that when the series is over, it's over at the Barclays Center rather than at TD Garden where Kyrie Irving is going to sage the court
exactly.
Before and after the game. I mean, if you're a Celtics fan, where I think they could have full capacity by game 4. So there's going to be, a complete sellout for the first time in a year and a half.
And remember, Seth, he's never played in front of Boston fans before.
Right. Yeah. When he came here, played Christmas Day, there were no fans in the stands. So, and last year he didn't play all but 18 or 20 games, and he wasn't here. I don't know. I don't know if Kyrie handles being the man in the black hat. No. I'm not sure with him. I don't know about him. He's just so out there that I'm not sure how he handles that. Like Jordan and Kobe handled that. They loved it. I don't think LeBron really likes that either because he loves to be loved. But as far as players that are in this series, I mean, Tatum seems like he's kind of agnostic to whatever the hell is going around out there. I don't think he, lets much bother him or inspire him. He's kind of a flatliner. Durant, I think Durant's fine with being the man in the black hat. He's kind of embraced that, right? Because early in his career, he was the good guy. Remember? I mean, he was the guy everybody loved. But
I think he's fine with it on the court, but I think he just doesn't get it.
Well, I don't think he likes being that on Twitter.
No, it doesn't affect his game. On the court, you're right. It doesn't affect his game.
Nothing affects that guy's
game. But I don't think
he
understands why people don't like him.
Right.
I still don't think he's comprehended that.
He's in a complete bubble. And James Harden, as long as the strip clubs are back open in New York, he's going to be fine.
Yeah, he doesn't care. The Kyrie thing, though, remember, I think it was the first game the Nets played the Celtics after Kyrie had signed. He wasn't there, but the Celtics fans were booing and saying, boo, like F you, Kyrie, or something like that. And he had that statement on Twitter being like, it was just basically super passive aggressive. So I don't know how comfortable he is with being booed. I mean, he's going to be booed loudly at the Garden.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I think he will be. There'll be 4 people there clapping for him, and the other 18,000 and change will be booing him. I can't remember what the reception was when Kyrie's first game as a Boston Celtic actually took place in Cleveland
He didn't
against
play.
the Cavaliers. No, he played that game. No, when he was
did he play one
with
game
the Celtics. The Celtics at Cleveland, I'm talking about. His first year with the Celtics. I thought he didn't
play against the Cavs.
No, he did. He was on the court when Gordon Hayward's injury happened. He played that night because I think LeBron blocked his shot to end the game. I just wanted to get that in.
Okay.
But he blocked his shot. Kyrie was attempting, I think, a tying three, which LeBron blocked, but Kyrie played in that game. I remember when Gordon Hayward went out, the Celtics, at that point, you're like, they're going to get blown out here, and they kept it close. I mean, that happens in basketball. A star player gets hurt, and the team picks it up from that point going forward. So I think, he did play in that game, if I recall. So we'll see what happens. If they're going to beat you, which they are going to beat you, let it happen in Game 5 in Brooklyn so that, Kyrie doesn't give you a giant middle finger.
Right, exactly. Let's talk about the Laker game, Sap, now that we've gotten the Celtics out of the way. And
do we have to?
Yeah, well, we do, because this is – I'm not coming off of my Lakers in 5 prediction, by the way, Sap.
Okay.
Everybody was – I said that, I posted it on Twitter. I said it on the show multiple times. I've said it to my friends, and everybody was giving me crap. And I said, well, go look at last year what happened. They lost the first game in the first 2 rounds, and they won both those series in 5 games.
Right.
So I'm not backing off of it. I think they just played a bad game. Listen, the fact that they played a bad game coming off of LeBron and Anthony Davis being hurt for the last couple of months, I get that that's scarier than them losing the first game in the bubble where they were all healthy. I look at Phoenix, and I still don't see a team that's capable of beating the Lakers 4 times. So maybe I'll be wrong about my Lakers in 5. I still think the Lakers will win the series, and I honestly still think that they'll win the next 4 games. Maybe I'm crazy, Seth.
I think it goes 6 games and the Lakers win. I'll put one more Suns win in there. Maybe the crowd carries them in Game 5. I do think the Lakers will come out strong in Game 2. LeBron James in his career has lost Game 1 of a playoff series 12 times and then gone on to win that series. Maybe I should make it to make more sense. In LeBron's playoff history, he's won 12 playoff series after losing Game 1 of that series.
There it is.
I mean, we know exactly what he does. He comes out in Game 1, feels out the opposition, and then he goes from there. There's someone else that's been wildly successful in another sport that does somewhat similar things. His name is Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick and Tom Brady played in 9 Super Bowls together. They won 6, lost 3. You realize in 9 first quarters, they never scored a touchdown, and then they just kind of eased into the game. And Belichick does that during the regular season, right? September is the feeling out period. October, you get better, and then you're playing your best football into December, going into the postseason. LeBron kind of does that in the postseason. It almost looks like he's disconnected or dismissive or not really concerned, or use any other adjective to describe the way LeBron looked yesterday. He came out looking strong. He had like 8 points in the first 4 minutes. He had a couple of threes. I said, he's going to score 35 tonight and they're going to be fine. And then he just kind of like stopped scoring.
Yeah, Sap, to your credit, I mean, you were all over this, I think, when we did this on Friday or Saturday. I don't remember which day it was, but you said this exact same thing about the first games with LeBron, is that it's sort of a feeling out period for him. Yep. And I agreed with you at the time. I agree with you now. I just don't think it's a huge cause for concern.
No.
Today and after the Lakers game, just like after they lost the first game of the Blazers last year, the media is all over them, writing their epitaph, saying, well, this isn't a team that anybody's scared of. I think who said that? Stephen A. Smith or no, Charles Barkley said that. Nobody's scared of the Lakers this year. And
he had Portland sweeping the Lakers last year in the first round. So Charles does change his mind. I love both Charles Barkley and Kendrick Perkins. I've never seen 2 guys change their mind more than them. And I love them both. But Perkins, one moment's got James Harden as the greatest player in the world, and then it's Durant, then it's LeBron, and whatever. And I love Perkins and I love Charles. They're awesome. But look, I like to change my mind too. You can't just take a take and just bang your head against the wall with it and then be proven wrong. You have to be somewhat, fluid with what you think. But LeBron will feel out the opposition and then go from there. The only times you've seen him really push it in Game 1 is when he realizes he doesn't have the better team. Go back to the 2018 finals, Game 1 against Golden State, where he was an enormous underdog. Game 1, 51 points, 8 rebounds, 8 assists. Cleveland loses in overtime. end up getting swept in that series. That game one of that series, he was just dominant. I mean, he really did look like a dad playing against his sons and sons' friends. He was that much better than anybody else on the court because he knew, look, I can't give up any opportunities to try to steal a game. When he thinks he has the better team or knows he has the better team, he just kind of feels them out. You remember the Eastern Conference Finals in 2018, lost the first 2 games at TD Garden. People are like, what's wrong with him? Well, look at what he did the next 5 games. He was unstoppable.
Yeah,
so
he paces himself.
But he's not the player he was in 2018, and he's not really the player he was just 7 months ago because there are some injury concerns there. And I know everyone thinks the ankle injury was just a way to take a couple of months off. He doesn't look quite as explosive, but again, he's 36 years old. So, there's the ankle, there's the poked eye, there's the torn rotator cuff now that he's dealing with. So there's a lot of injuries for LeBron.
Dealing with that that was a tough injury. Oh, man.
It is. I'm dealing with a left rotator cuff myself. I know what LeBron's going through, and I'm 22 years older. If he has any remedies, then I
was scanning the Phoenix police scanner saying, oh man, was there a sniper in the Phoenix arena? Because man, he went down. He was down writhing, and he's
LeBron hit your free throw shot and there's no issue. You know, because he's following up his missed free throw. He's 1 for 4 from the line, and Chris Paul, who is a dirty player, kind of undercut him. But Chris Paul did get hurt earlier in the game, and Chris Paul was not himself the entire game.
Also weighs 100 pounds less than him.
Yeah, he does. I mean, Chris Paul's about 5'11", I'd say 180. LeBron's 6'9", 260. I mean, LeBron's a massive guy. He's as big as the centers out there. He's as big as Drummond and AD.
So while he undercut him, I'm not sure that it was with that much force.
No, LeBron.
So the flop of the weekend, Sep, was Did you see Gobert after he'd fouled out of that game? By the way, one of my worst performances of the weekend was Gobert. He was on the baseline after he'd fouled out, jawing with somebody, and they lightly tapped him, and he went he flew back into the stands. He flew all the way back to the nosebleed section.
Yep. Well, again, he was probably a former soccer player. He's from France, and
that's true.
Nobody flops more than soccer players, although basketball players are pretty close to soccer players as far as flopping.
All right, Sap, what went wrong in this game? You chalk it up to bad game, or is there something? Are you actually concerned?
Well, the only thing is when Drummond's on the court, he'll put up decent numbers, right? He had 12 and 9 in 19 minutes, which on the surface, those are really good numbers, especially when you compare him to Anthony Davis. Yeah, I mean, in a vacuum, he played well, but that's what Andre Drummond is. He's never really won anywhere. Anthony Davis had 13 and 7 in nearly 40 minutes. That's god-awful. And Anthony Davis, there's times where he really doesn't look engaged, and that's more serious, obviously, because LeBron, I think he's plotting what he's going to do in games 2, 3, 4, and so forth, whereas Anthony Davis just doesn't look engaged. Anthony Davis was totally outplayed by DeAndre Ayton. You mentioned that Friday when we were previewing this series, that if Ayton could play as well as Anthony Davis, then Phoenix maybe has some sort of chance. Well, he thoroughly outplayed Anthony Davis yesterday at 21 and 16. He only missed one shot. He was 10 of 11 from the field. Davis again 13 and 7. So advantage Phoenix in that matchup. And then Devin Booker was by far the best player on the court yesterday. I don't even think there was a close second. Now Phoenix does have concerns with Chris Paul. I mean, I'm sure going to gut this out. He's a tough SOB, but he's not going to be as effective as he normally is. I mean, we're talking about his right shoulder. That's going to impact his shooting. We saw his ball handling was sloppy.
In this game.
He wasn't. Other than the fact that when he's on the court, you may be playing 4.5 against 5 physically, but mentally you're playing 5.5 against 5 because the guy still has a huge brain and is going to set up the defense and set up the offense and make the right moves. And Devin Booker, took the ball and literally ran with it. So that's a concern. And the Lakers were also out-rebounded in this game, which is alarming. The Lakers are one of the best rebounding teams in the league without question. And what were they out-rebounded yesterday?
I can tell you, Sep.
47-33. 47-33.
I mean, significant.
That's massive. I mean, that's a great rebounding team. So do you take Drummond out? Because Drummond is in the way a lot. I mean, Anthony Davis
should be your best rebounder. I mean, statistically, he's your best rebounder.
He's a great rebounder, but on offense, he seems to be in the way. He clogs the lane. So what happened, Phoenix really packed the lane and dared the Lakers to hit threes. Well, they were 7 of 26 from 3. KCP was god awful. I mean, KCP is kind of an X factor for the Lakers. If he starts shooting well from three, that opens up the entire court for Anthony Davis and LeBron. LeBron opens up the court for everybody else as well. But when Drummond's out there, it gets very cramped. And Phoenix was basically packing it in, saying, we dare you to shoot, and the Lakers couldn't shoot from the outside. It also gets in the way of LeBron's forays to the basket. He's never really liked having a big guy out there in the lane while he's going to the basket because it's, may impede his drive. And then Anthony Davis, who we know likes to play, a stretch four rather than, a traditional five. The Lakers are at their best when he's at the five. And they also got to get him down on the blocks a little bit more than, facing the basket. He's not Kevin Durant. He doesn't have that same skill set. He can hit threes. He can hit perimeter shots, just not as effectively as great shooters. So those were the issues for the Lakers. So if you take Drummond out and go smaller, where do you find those minutes? I've told you all year that the problem with the Lakers is they have, I still believe, the best player in the sport in LeBron James. They've got a great player in Anthony Davis, who's had a down year. Like, who's their third best player? The pecking order is LeBron, Anthony Davis, and like 8 guys who are kind of interchangeable. It should be, right? I mean, but he's not always there either. And there's times where it looks like LeBron's getting pissed at him because Schroeder's, dominating the ball. And I don't think they work as well together as, say, LeBron and Rondo did last year in the bubble. So, KCP,
Schroeder's looking to score more than Rondo was looking to score.
Yeah, whereas Rondo had great chemistry with Anthony Davis because they played together in New Orleans. They got the Kentucky connection. They never played together in college. But I miss Rondo. I told you that in the offseason. Schroeder's a better player at this point in his career, but not necessarily in the postseason. Alex Caruso goes out there. He gives you what he does. KCP is streaky.
Kuzma gave you nothing last game.
Give you nothing. Absolutely nothing.
0 points.
If they're worried about rebounding, then Anthony Davis has to step up and rebound better. And LeBron's going to have to rebound better. I mean, he had 7 rebounds yesterday. He's quite capable of getting more. You can't get out rebound 47 to 33 when you're the Lakers. That's one of your strengths.
Is LeBron going to have to check Booker in this series?
At some point, yeah. In strategic moments, because they weren't.
They run him off screens, right? So
they run him off a ton of screens, and he moves so well without the ball.
Tiring.
He really is. I tell you, you watch him in the regular season, and you check a game in February, the second game on TNT, and you're kind of zoning in and out. In the postseason, you're really zoning in a player. He really impressed me. He's grown on me substantially just off of that one game, because that's an opportunity of a lifetime. You're out there against all these great players, and you're the best guy. Now he's got to continue on with this. He can't retire after one playoff victory. That doesn't work that way. But yeah, LeBron's probably going to have to, check him more often. And you got to pretty much leave Chris Paul not alone, but, dare him to shoot, especially with that right shoulder injury. There's going to be a concern there. So yeah, LeBron's going to have to man up and defend him, not the entire game, because he's got to do so many other things, but in strategic moments. We saw that last year against Jamal Murray in the Western Conference Finals. When it was winning time, LeBron shut him down. I think Booker's better than Jamal Murray.
He's bigger. Yeah.
He's bigger. He's really a good ball player. I tell you, I know I sound like a broken record, but that kid impressed me a lot yesterday.
See, I know you said Kobe. I could see some of it. I see a lot of Ray Allen.
Poor man's Kobe. Yeah, I think he's better putting the ball on the floor than Ray Allen. Yeah, I mean, to compare someone to Kobe is probably outlandish, but kind of a similar type game with the great footwork and all of those things.
The issue with defending him is the Lakers are almost forced to have to put LeBron in because they have good defenders. Schroeder's a good defender. Pope is a good defender, but he's bigger than them, so he can shoot over them if he's running off a screen.
Yeah. Caruso's what, 6'4", 6'5"?
He's not as big as Booker, so he can still
Booker's
shoot over
6'5". Yeah, and Booker's long, and he's got a million ways to score. Yeah, I mean, this has basically been LeBron's career. He's also the best defender on his team. And I don't want to get back into the LeBron Michael Jordan comparisons, but Michael Jordan had Scottie Pippen as an elite defender, and then the second three-peat, he had Dennis Rodman as an elite defender. I mean, Jordan wasn't covering Karl Malone in those finals. It was Dennis Rodman.
AD is an elite defender, but he doesn't defend wings because he's not a wing. No, but he is. I mean, for his position, he's one of the best defensive players in the league.
I don't know of any player in the league that closes out on shooters better than him, right? Like, he just kind of like comes at you and will block a 24-foot jump shot while he's starting out from under the rim. I mean, like Pat Ewing used to do stuff like that because Davis has impeccable timing. He's going to have to step up. That's the guy that's going to have to step up. And he had some down games in the bubble last year where you'd go, is this guy really into it? That's why I never quite put him up with the really top guys in the league. Talent-wise, I think he's there, but he doesn't bring it every game. Those real top guys that we always talk about, whether it's LeBron or Steph or Kevin Durant, even James Harden, Kawhi, they tend to bring it pretty much every night. With AD, it's kind of like, I'll be ready for the next game, right? I mean, he's got that little bit in him.
I would imagine this will be his worst game of the series. I can't see him playing that bad.
It better be. Yeah, it better be for the Lakers, because if he's worse than that, they'll lose another game. And now,
if he wasn't healthy, I would be more worried about it. But I think he's healthy. I think he has bad nights occasionally. He has. It's a thing with him. But I think he'll come back.
Didn't, like 2 weeks ago against Phoenix, he had like 42 and 12?
Yeah, so that's why I think it's a bad night. Yeah, so I wouldn't be too worried about it. I'm sticking with Lakers at 5.
Well, here's the thing. DeAndre Ayton, great game. Devin Booker, great game, right? Some of their, complimentary players, nice game. And the Lakers were god-awful, right? I mean, couldn't hit threes. They couldn't hit free throws. They couldn't rebound. LeBron's flopping. I mean, and the Suns won by 9.
So you admit it.
I mean, with all that emotion, of course he does. But that's part of his game. That's what makes the guy's wildly entertaining. I mean, that's what makes him LeBron. I mean, it's what basketball's great for. Mike Trout doesn't do anything that you get upset about or that you embrace, and he's the best player in baseball. With these guys in the NBA, they're all a little bit off, and that's what makes them fun to talk about and watch.
I saw this graphic. I retweeted, I think, on Twitter, Sap, that it was a pitcher. He got hit in the face with a line drive. He was down on the ground for like 30 seconds. Yep. Joe Burrow tore his ACL and MCL. He was down on the ground for 60. LeBron poked in the eye, down for 90 seconds. So,
that's got to be scary, though. Getting poked in the eye is scary.
Oh, it's very scary. It's way more scary than getting hit in the face with a hard baseball coming at you at 100 miles an hour. That's not that scary.
Well, LeBron's got a movie career to worry about.
The two biggest shots, when there were some big shots this weekend, came from Trae Young hit a huge one in Madison Square Garden, and Chris Middleton hit the game winner in Milwaukee. Which one was the bigger shot? That's my question for you.
I'm going to say it was Chris Middleton. I mean, I'm watching that game, and I picked Milwaukee to go to the finals, and I'm watching them go, and this looks like the same team that lost earlier than they were supposed to the last 2 years. Giannis can't hit free throws, 6 of 13 from the floor. Down the stretch in games, you almost can't go to him because if he gets fouled, he may make 1 of 2. He doesn't have a full-fleshed offensive game, but that was a huge shot for Chris Middleton. And they were at home, and they had better win that game, because Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo were 8 for 37 from the floor. You catch Miami in that type of game and you don't beat them, now you're really going to doubt yourself. And, Trae Young's basket was huge as well. That was just such an exciting game. 15,000 people at Madison Square Garden, the fans going nuts. And, the Knicks just bust their ass. And Trae Young looked like the best player on the court last night, by the way, more than anyone else. He's an electric player. We're both tremendous. Big. We're both big Trae Young fans. I mean, when he becomes a little more consistent from 3, that guy's unstoppable, because I think he's a better passer than Steph Curry. He's not the shooter Steph is, but he's
lead the
better
league in
passer.
Scoring.
Yeah, and he could lead
times.
in assists one time also, because he's that good, especially if you've got some really good scorers around him. That's a fun series because it's two teams that you're not really expecting much, but now here they are as a 4-5 matchup. One of them is going to win and play presumably Philadelphia. So I'd say the Middleton shot was the biggest, because they had to win that game. They really did, or else there'd be a lot of self-doubt and there'd be a lot of doubt throughout the country of, okay, the Bucks just a regular season team.
Right. You don't want to become what the Raptors were every year in the playoffs, where they face all the Cavs and crap their pants. You don't want the Heat to become, your boogeyman if you're the Bucks. And so, that was a massive shot. And Middleton is fully capable of making those shots. It wasn't a surprise that it went in, because, he's excellent to that. And he played a really good game. Besides the free throw shooting, Giannis played a really good game too, Seth. Mean, he had 26, 18 rebounds, 3 steals, and 5 assists. I mean, he's terrible from the free throw line. That was it.
Yeah. I mean, he had a free throw shot attempt violation. Like I hadn't seen that in years. Like
Since
that
Jermaine O'Neal, I think, was the last person I
yeah,
saw do that.
it used to be that in tennis occasionally. Like you got to serve within the time frame, or like a pitcher. If Major League Baseball ever gets their head out of their ass and decides to use a pitch clock at the major league level, I can't wait to see the first violation and the pitcher just flips out because they've awarded the batter a ball or whatever mechanism they're going to use. So yeah, I mean, Giannis, I think, cares too much and thinks too much at the free throw line. Ben Simmons is like, just give me the ball. If it goes in, it goes in. If it doesn't, then so be it. I'll steal it on the other end because I'm such a great defensive player.
Here's the thing, though, Sap. With Milwaukee, I know they won the game, but Giannis played well, Middleton played well, Lopez played well, Holiday played well. You look at the other end, Butler didn't play particularly well. Adebayo was downright terrible. Hero was bad, and you won by 2 points in overtime.
Right.
So, how do you look at the rest of this series, Sap? I know you picked Milwaukee, but are you readjusting based off this game at all?
They had better win game 2 because then they can exhale and say, okay, we've kind of built some control in this series, and I expect them to win game 2. I use the zigzag theory in the NBA playoffs where I don't bet anymore. I stopped about 10 years ago, thank God. But the zigzag theory is take game 1 of the postseason, you don't bet it. Now, whoever covers, you bet the other side in game 2. So Miami covered on Saturday against Milwaukee. So now the zigzag is Milwaukee will cover the 4.5 point spread in game 2. So I think I'll go with the zigzag theory there, and also the zigzag theory tonight would lead you to believe that the Denver Nuggets will even that series up at 1 game apiece because Portland covered the point spread in game 1. In fact, won the game outright. Now, bet Denver -1.5. So those are my picks tonight, by the way. And we'll do some zigzag theory picks from time to time. Would be both the Bucks and Denver, winning comfortably on their home court. But yeah, if this gets to 1-1, then Milwaukee is going to be doubting itself, saying, well, we're just lucky we won game 1. We needed Middleton to bail us out, and Miami was awful. And then when Miami got their act together, they beat us in game 2, and now Miami has home court advantage. And although home court advantage, I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. What exactly does it mean in the postseason right now? Because some buildings are a third full, some are half full. It hasn't been a factor all year. So will it weigh into the postseason? We don't know.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Denver and Portland, who do play tonight. And Portland, I think, surprisingly took game 1 handily. And what they did, Sap, we don't have to talk a lot about this game because it's not the marquee series, but I think it's still a really good series. Mm-hmm. Portland decided to let Jokic score whenever he wanted. They took away the passing, the playmaking. 1 assist for Jokic. You'll never see that number again.
No.
Ever. Other 34 points, 16 rebounds, you look at the stat line and you go, yeah, he was great. But 1 assist, it's more likely he scores no points than gets 1 assist. And so is this a strategy that can work for Portland, or can Denver adjust to this?
Well, Denver's other players are going to have to step up. And look, they miss Jamal Murray. There's no question. They continue to play really well without him. But when you get down to the postseason, we saw what Jamal Murray was able to do last year in the bubble. He was an elite player, so they obviously miss him. So now a lot's going to fall on Michael Porter Jr. and the rest of those players there. Aaron Gordon, will they be able to step up? And there'll be some coaching decisions by Mike Malone of Denver to try to get those guys in better positions to contribute, because Jokic, if anything, seems to be a passer first, right? We talked about a guy who averaged over 8 assists per game, scoring 25, 26 points per game. The guy was top 5 in points, rebounds, and assists. Not average, but total points, rebounds, and assists, because he didn't miss any games. And a lot of guys missed games this year. And I think he still deserves the MVP because it's a regular season award. And he still had big points and rebounds, just 1 assist. Now, assists, you're dependent on your teammates. It's not as if he didn't pass or didn't make nice passes. Just no one could hit shots to help him out. But no, that was an interesting strategy, basically saying, go get yours. Just don't let the other guys beat us. This is a strategy that teams have used for years. I remember when I was, covering the Celtics back in the 80s, and Casey Jones, I got to talk to him a lot. And he said when we played the Lakers, when they had Weston Lakers, it was like, those guys are going to score. Just make sure those other guys don't. And that was their strategy. And, they won every time they met in the postseason. Didn't hurt that they had Bill Russell with them. But that's a strategy. Let Jordan go get his 45, but, don't let anybody else score for you. I mean, Bradley Beal, isn't he like 1-9 in his career when he scores more than 40 points? So that's kind of a way to look at it. It does. Yeah. I mean, you're like, in the ideal world, Jokic is a 26, 14, and 10 guy, and that means Michael Porter's getting 24, and the rest of the team is. They miss Jamal Murray. That's the bottom line. And I picked Portland to win this series. Portland playing really well down the stretch. And look at what Carmelo Anthony did in that game. They have 18 points in 22 minutes, shooting 50%
the whole way.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, gets booed in Denver, gets booed in New York. Probably would get booed in Houston too, because those are, three of the places he played before. But he's become a really nice player for them. He's in better shape than he's ever been, and he's accepted that role. It took him a while to get there, but the guy can score in his sleep. So he's done a nice job there. Portland's got some nice pieces there, and of course we know how good Dame is. I don't know if there's a better clutch player in this league than Dame Lillard.
Yeah, I think I saw a stat, Sap, that Dame was responsible for 64 total points in that game, and Jokic, who's usually responsible for upwards of like 70 points, was only responsible for his 34 points plus 2 more, so 36 points. So Dame Lillard had the far greater impact on that game, even though they both scored 34 points. Lillard had the bigger impact on that game. So we'll see if Denver adjusts to that. Sap, a game that I was surprised by, but maybe shouldn't have been, looks like same old Clippers. They lose to the Mavericks. Luka Doncic goes bananas, as this seems to be, and his coach, Rick Carlisle, said this his time of year. Doncic posts a triple-double, 31 points, 11 assists, 10 rebounds. The Clippers just seem to not look right. What's the deal in this series, Sap?
They can't close. I mean, they're like a baseball team with a bad bullpen. Like, they'll get a lead in the fourth quarter and they can't close, which is kind of perplexing, because you would think Kawhi Leonard can get whatever shot he wants whenever he wants, because he's got that great mid-range game. Look, no one trusts Paul George, especially those on his team. He just doesn't seem to step up at the right time. You would think that Rondo could right the ship because of his experience in the postseason and his leadership and his incredible intuition he has on the court. He's right there with the likes of LeBron and Paul George, Chris Paul being like the 3 smartest guys in the league. It just doesn't seem to work. Doesn't it almost feel like the Clippers are just a bunch of hired guns? Like Kawhi signed there because he didn't want to go play with LeBron, so he went to the Clippers, and then he talked Paul George into going there. It just seems like they're a bunch of guys thrown together, and they never really build that chemistry that you need to have a really good basketball team.
That's what talent will win out too,
but the Nets guys, they just, that game flows pretty easily for them, doesn't it? Because all 3 of those guys can all get their own shots, and James Harden's made that work for me in Brooklyn. I really think he's been the key guy there, because especially Kyrie in some sense showed some maturity by saying, okay, James, you're the point guard, which James Harden's a better point guard than Kyrie Irving. And now he's kind of running the offense, and they're running the D'Antoni offense that was running Houston and in Phoenix when Steve Nash was playing, and Nash is now the head coach. But the Clippers just, look, they could win the next 4 games. I always fear them because we've seen Kawhi do this, although Kawhi has really had 2 great playoff runs. And again, the championship he won a couple of years ago, he was fortunate that Kevin Durant got hurt and then Klay Thompson got hurt. And again, he won the finals MVP, but Kyle Lowry or Pascal Siakam could have also won the finals MVP. They played just as well. He was good in that series. It wasn't great.
I'm saying, like, in this last game,
he's fine.
He was fine. He wasn't great, but he was. He didn't shoot well from 3, but he was fine.
No, he's fine. He's a cyborg. But isn't this what you kind of expect from him? Like, I mean, he's flatlines.
What I didn't expect was Doncic to just give it to them, because, like I said when we previewed the series, I said the best player on Dallas by a mile is Doncic, and the 2 best wing defenders in the NBA, you could make an argument, are both on the Clippers. And yet Doncic, I mean, he took it too. I mean, he picked them apart.
And then there were times where Pat Beverly's on him. Like, how the hell is Pat Beverly? And I know he's a scrappy defender. He's 6'1", And Doncic just took him to the hole, and then he's screaming out like, "You're too effing small," which is true because Doncic is 6'7", 6'8", and has that incredible variety
Kawhi's
into
got
his
to be on
game.
him all game. All game, Kawhi's got to guard him.
Or Paul George, just rotate
or Paul
it.
George,
Yeah. So and again, it's a lot to ask your primary scorer to also be your primary defender. That hasn't happened much in league history. I know that Jordan Bobos will say, well, he was the best defender, and he had Scottie Pippen for his entire, most of his career while he was winning championships, and he had Dennis Rodman, and Horace Grant was a really good defender. I mean, the second three-peat, he had Ron Harper and Kukoc. I mean, he had all sorts of defensive players around him. So yeah, you generally don't ask. Larry Bird was never asked to cover the other team's best scorer. You don't ask these great players to do that. LeBron's had to do it more than most superstars. Kobe could do it as well, but it's exhausting. Especially if the guy moves well without the basketball. I mean, could you imagine covering Steph Curry on defense? Like, you'd have no energy to go down the other end of the court and do anything. You're going to run 7 miles in a game chasing him around.
All right, let's finish up with the Jazz game, Sap. The Jazz lose game 1 to the Grizzlies. We talked briefly about how great Ja Morant and Dillon Brooks were in that game. Obviously, Donovan Mitchell doesn't play in it. There's reports coming out today that Donovan Mitchell is really, really pissed off at the Jazz organization, especially their medical staff, that they would not clear him for that game. That's something to keep an eye on in the after the season comes to an end. Remember, last year there was issues with him and Rudy Gobert. The Grizzlies continue to play really good basketball, are as hot as any team in the league right now, Sap. I mean, they had to scrap and claw their way into the thing, and now they take game 1 in Utah, which has been the hardest place to win a game in the NBA this season. Obviously, the caveat, no Donovan Mitchell, but let's look at these 3 teams that we talked about, the Lakers, the Clippers, the Jazz. Which of those losses is the most troubling to you?
I would think it's the Clippers, because the Clippers now have a 4-game losing streak in the postseason going back to last year. And again, I understand that, last year may not have any impact on this year, but now there's going to be that doubt among the Clippers that, like, what the hell's wrong with us? We don't close games. We don't play elite defense. Luka put a scare into them last year in the first round. That series went 6 games. Remember, Luka hit the game-winning shot in Game 4 to tie the series up 2 games apiece, and that was with Porzingis hurt or ejected at different times in that series. And I think Luka's a better player than he was a year ago. And look, they lost home court advantage, as did Utah. I'm not really concerned about the Lakers. I may be if they lose Game 2. Even then, I think they can still win 4 out of 5 against Phoenix. It's easier if they can win Game 2, which I think they will, because they can't play any worse. And I think for the most part, Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton can't play any better. So, you only lost by 9. You should play better and should win that game. Utah, that's interesting, because I just wonder, Donovan Mitchell hasn't played since April 16th. So he's expected to play in Game 2. How's he going to be?
Announced. Yep,
it's already been announced he's playing. How's he going to be? Now, he's a young guy coming back, from an ankle injury. He relies a lot on athleticism and explosion. He's not Klay Thompson, who just runs to the spot, catch and shoot. He's a guy who relies on that athleticism. So I don't know how he's exactly going to be. Is he going to try to take over the team? There's a lot that in play there. And Memphis right now is just on a roll, right, Jet? As you said it, they had to beat San Antonio in Memphis. Then 2 days later, fly out to the West Coast and beat Steph Curry and Golden State in overtime. And then 2 days later, they're back to Utah for another game. I mean, that felt like a 3-day road trip, even though I know the first game was at home, but you're playing different teams in different locations, and you get through all of that. Pretty damn impressive.
In the first 2 games, you couldn't lose or you were out. They were both elimination games.
Yeah, so maybe going through it for them, they were, ready to go in Game 1 in Utah. Hadn't played in a week, and Utah knew they were going to be a 1 or 2 seed weeks ago. They just weren't sharp enough. And again, they didn't have their best player.
Well, and this is the ultimate house money series, right? Because, Utah's the 1 and the Grizzlies are the 8 that got in via the play-in tournament. So the Grizzlies have nothing to lose. They're young, haven't been here before, so they're excited about the opportunity. They don't really know better than to be, anything other than thinking they can beat anybody. They just beat Steph Curry. I think that Mitchell coming back should make a huge difference if he's right. Even if he's 80%, it should make a huge difference. I will say this, though. Memphis will know he's hurt, and they're gonna target him. They're gonna make him work really hard because they're great. They talk about teams that want to ugly it up. They want to ugly it up. That's in their and it's been the way in Memphis for 15 years. That's the way they continue to build the team, is with a defensive, aggressive identity. And guys
Tony
like Kyle
Allen,
Anderson,
right?
Yeah, Tony Allen, Marc Gasol when he was less than a corpse of a player. He Zach Randolph, but Dillon Brooks, Kyle Anderson, those are two guys that are really good, outstanding defensive players, and they're going to make it hard on whoever they play.
Yeah.
I don't think that you can expect 31 from Dillon Brooks every night, but no. I do think you can expect the Grizzlies to not make anything easy on Utah. What I was surprised about, though, and this is something you said, Sap, when we were previewing this series and why we thought it was going to be a quick series. The Grizzlies aren't really an adept outside shooting team. They want to get to the ball of the basket, and the Jazz are really good at defending the basket. And the Grizzlies were able to get the ball to the basket.
Yeah, I always think that is Rudy Gobert a bit overrated?
I think he's one of the most.
He's one defensive player of the year, and then in his big showdown with Joel Embiid,
love him.
Yeah,
the advanced, and I like the advanced stats, but he's overrated.
They also loved Al Horford too, and then I'd watch and go, "Yeah, this guy's good." I do. He's a good player, but let's not elevate him to Hall of Fame status. Rudy Gobert, his big matchup this year was against Joel Embiid, and what did Embiid score? 40 on him. And look, Embiid's unstoppable too. Yes, literally stuffed him in the basket. I mean, it's never fair to say, well, he couldn't shut down Joel Embiid. I mean, Bill Russell went up against Will Chamberlain a lot, beat him all the time, but Will Chamberlain still put up big numbers. You can't stop guys like that. Like Joel Embiid is unstoppable.
I thought Valanciunas outplayed Gobert in the last.
He did, and Valanciunas
Gobert cannot lose that matchup.
No, it's like Anthony Davis against DeAndre Ayton. If that's even the matchup, or whether it's Drummond against DeAndre Ayton, and at that point, the Lakers win the series. If that's a wash, they're going to need Anthony Davis in the end to put up better numbers than DeAndre Ayton. If they lose that matchup and Devin Booker's running around getting 34, 7, and 8, Chris Paul could play that entire series left-handed, and it's going to be tough. So maybe in the end, Rudy Gobert's just an overrated player. I mean, that can certainly be the case.
I mean, he's the second best player in that team. Everybody, talks about him all the time, saying he's underrated. We say he's overrated. Donovan Mitchell's not there. Game 1 of the playoffs, you're the 1 seed. You put up 11 points. I'm sorry, you got to do better. I know he's not a scorer, but 11 points, even for a guy who's not a scorer, is not enough.
No, I mean, there's ways to get him involved in the offense, the lob game, whatever the case may be. It's just no one's taken them seriously this year, and they had the best record in basketball. A lot of people didn't take Phoenix seriously. They had the second best record in basketball, but you did see in that first game that they really do miss Donovan Mitchell. I mean, he's been out since April 16. I'm going to be anxious to see what he's like when he comes back. Again, he's 24, 25. You can recover from injuries quicker than, say, a 36-year-old guy like LeBron James, but he relies so much on athleticism that, if he's not moving the way he normally does, the explosion's not going to be there. Donovan Mitchell's 6'1", maybe 6'2". It's not like a guy who's just going to rise above everybody. Although he's a bull going to the basket. That's why I like that comparison with Dwayne Wade, who's now 1% owner of the Utah Jazz. Maybe they can get Wade out of retirement and he can help them out a little bit. Although he's hosting a show, The Cube, coming up on one of the networks. So Dwayne Wade's expanding his brand as well.
Here's my prediction, Sap. If the Jazz lose this series, which I still don't think they will, but I guess it's possible, Donovan Mitchell is a New York Knick next season.
Ooh. Is he a free agent at the end of this year?
No, he's not, but I think he's not particularly happy in Utah.
Man, that would be great for the Knicks.
And the Knicks can offer him a good amount. I would not Julius Randle. RJ Barrett for Donovan Mitchell straight up. Who says no?
Oh, well, probably. Well, if I'm Utah, I would say no because I'd need more than R.J. Barrett. But maybe some draft capital in there. Yeah, Donovan Mitchell would probably love playing for the Knicks. He's from New York. His dad worked for the Mets. That's maybe where you go to Dwayne Wade, who's 1% owner, and say, okay, this is what you're here for. Like, talk Donovan Mitchell out of requesting a trade and get him all in, but that's.
I'm starting to see the writing on the wall, Sap. Between the Gobert thing last year and now this. Yep. I mean, We've seen this before in other sports too. When you start to have an issue with the team doctors, the relationship with the team really disintegrates fast.
It does. Yeah, because then you don't trust the organization because the organization is not looking out for you. That's why when players go for second opinions, people flip out. I'm like, if I'm a pro athlete, I'm going for a second and third opinion. My body is everything. I'm not just going to take the word of a team. I mean, Tom Brady brought in Alex Guerrero. God bless him. Like, he trusted Alex Guerrero. Alex Guerrero is not going to steer him wrong. He may have steered other people wrong. Remember Gronkowski wanted to get second opinions and Belichick would flip out. Like, the players have to be concerned with themselves, especially in football. I mean, basketball, I get the contracts are bigger and guaranteed, but these guys got to make as much money as they can. Yeah, that would be interesting if Donovan Mitchell, went to the Knicks, because that's real star power to go along with Julius Randle. They could be onto something there, but wouldn't that be strange if they lose to Memphis in this first round after having such a great regular season? At that point, Utah's like, well, what do they feel like? Like, even are they the Washington Nationals who kept going to the postseason with the best record and getting bounced in the first round, or the Oakland A's? Maybe that's a better comparison, because Oakland, they always make the postseason. They don't even win a game, right? They just get bounced. At least like the Tampa Bay Rays got to the World Series last year. The Utah Jazz, kind of the Oakland A's of basketball. Like, they're always there, but they really never break through.
Yeah, maybe, Sap. That might be an accurate comparison. We'll have to see how the rest of the series goes. Before we finish up, Sap, there's 2 games tonight. Heat Bucks, Blazers Nuggets. Give me your picks and which of these games is more important to what team is this game more important to? Heat, Bucks, Blazers, or Nuggets?
I'm going to say that the home teams win comfortably. I think Miami wins by 10. I think Denver wins by 7 to 8 points, so they'll cover the point spreads.
The Milwaukee wins.
I'm sorry, Milwaukee wins by 10. Maybe I had a Freudian slip there. Milwaukee holds home court advantage, wins by 10, and Denver evens up that series by a comfortable 7 to 8 point win. This may be a bigger game for Denver, because especially if Jokic goes out and only has 1 assist or 2 assists a game, like Portland's maybe onto something. And we know how good Portland can be with Dame Lillard. He's a flat out killer out there. And I think that the series would be really heading in favor of what, Portland would want to do. Right. If Milwaukee loses that series 1-1, so there's more pressure on Denver tonight. Because if they lose this game, they're down 0-2 going to Portland for 2. If the Bucks lose this, there's going to be some self-doubt, but at least it's 1-1 when they go back to Miami, when they go to Miami.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you on both your picks. I think that you're right. I actually think, though, the game means the most to Milwaukee. Based off of what we said earlier, Sep, that you played reasonably well. The Heat played pretty bad, and you escaped by the skin of your teeth with a win. If you then suddenly lose the next game, you go, wow, we barely won this last game. We lost this one. Now we're going to Miami, the same team that beat us last year. Again, I don't want that Toronto Raptors syndrome kicking in, when LeBron was their boogeyman. I don't want Milwaukee. If I'm Milwaukee, I don't want to give the Heat any sort of breathing room. And so I think it's important for Milwaukee to really take control of this series and go up 2-0 heading to Miami. So I think it's most important for them. I do think they'll win, but if they don't, there's going to be a lot of chatter about, just as there would have been had they lost game 1, Sap.
Yeah, there's a lot of teams that are facing pressure in this postseason, like Utah, best regular season record. Are they going to get bounced in the first round? The Clippers, who've got a very vocal owner in Steve Ballmer, who paid $2 billion for a team that was probably worth $1 billion and is building a $2 to $3 billion arena in Los Angeles. So he's committed $5 billion to the Clippers. If they get bounced in the first round after the great offseason they had 2 years ago where they signed Kawhi and traded for Paul George, and now they're an afterthought, a lot of pressure on them. There's pressure on the Lakers trying to repeat, but they did win the championship last year. So look, I don't think they want to get bounced in the first round, and the Lakers are held to a certain high standard. So there's pressure on them as well. And Denver, there's pressure too, Jet, because Nikola Jokic is going to win the MVP. You don't generally see the MVP bounced in the first round. That did happen a few years ago with Russell Westbrook, but I don't think
they were
going into that
seed.
postseason, they were, I believe, a 5 or 6, and no one expected the Thunder to make a run in the postseason because they were a flawed team. Not that anybody's expecting Denver to get to the NBA Finals because everyone's thinking the Lakers win it, but they are expected to beat Portland. Although one key thing here, Jet, despite it being 3 versus 6, Denver 3, Portland 6, Portland was favored in this series slightly. And I agreed with that. I think Portland's right now playing better than Denver, and they seem to be more of a whole team than the Denver Nuggets, who don't have their second best player in Jamal Murray.
Yeah, so we'll be back breaking down, all these series. We're going to be here all playoffs long, talking about everything that happens, reacting to all the games, making sure that you're up to date with what happens and our predictions. And we have we reserve the right to change our minds sometimes. If the Lakers don't win in 5, I'm going to deny that I ever said it and delete all of our prior podcasts.
There you go.
But I will say I still feel pretty comfortable about my Celtics being swept prediction.
Yeah, I mean, I'm leaning towards. I still think they could win one game because
they just suck, Sap. They're bad. That's the problem.
They're just
not good.
Yeah, no, they're not. They don't have their second best player. And Brooklyn, look, if Brooklyn didn't even play well the other night, and they won by 11.
Kemba Walker couldn't throw the ball in the ocean.
No,
good Lord,
he's overmatched, and it's not a pretty sight. It really isn't. I mean, it's not a good matchup. Let's put it that way. Because I mean, the Nets swept them in the regular season 3-0 by an average of 15 points per game, and they didn't even play well in game 1. They won by 11. I mean, you remember that Christmas Day game when Kyrie and Durant came to the Garden? It looked like they were playing some other sport than the Celtics.
Yeah,
they're that good offensively.
It's the real David versus Goliath, except for Goliath is going to win this. Just step on David in this one. So we'll be back, making sure that we're covering all these games, all these series. Everything every day gives us something new to talk about. So make sure that you are checking out the podcast. Again, we are the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. You can find us wherever podcasts are found. You can find us on YouTube at youtube.com/JetStryer. And we also always tweet out the links. For that, go to our Twitter pages. Saps is at JohnSap25, JOHNSAP25. Mine is at JetStryer, JETSTRIAR. So check that out. We'll make it nice and easy for you tweeting out the links. And we'll be back with more playoff coverage and news and predictions and, more down stuff about the Celtics and probably some good stuff about the Lakers, Sap. I think you'll be happy the next time we talk about the Lakers. I won't be happy next time we talk about the Celtics. But that's going to do it for us. Thanks, everybody, for listening or watching, and we'll talk to you later. See ya.